Hey, good morning, everybody. It is another great day to be alive. And in today's episode, we've got another entrepreneur interview. I had the pleasure of being able to speak with Beav Brodie, the founder and CEO of Tactical Baby Gear. Back in 2013, Beav realized a giant hole in the market, which would go on to create financial freedom and an 8-figure annual business. See, his wife had given birth to their second daughter, and as a guy that was covered in tattoos and worked on custom cars, almost every diaper bag is created to look like a purse. As an active and engaged father, he wanted something masculine, and when he didn't find it online, he decided to create it himself. It didn't start out to be a business, and it was something that he needed for himself, but like many great businesses, it grew organically, and eventually it would go on to create over $10 million a year in revenue. In this episode, Beav talks all about the struggles of building a multi-million-dollar apparel business, as well as dealing with other countries, prototypes, things that cost tens of thousands of dollars to get started when he had literally $0 to spend on that. He talks about partnerships and what it's like to stay motivated for success once you've already accomplished the dream. That's all coming up here next on Cost of Success. Ladies and gentlemen, Beav Brodie. Beav, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
So for those that don't know, I want to kind of give you a chance to say in your own words a little bit about the business, Tactical Baby Gear, because first thing, a baby company does not just jump off at, when I see a guy like you running a company all about baby gear, that's not the first thing that comes to mind, to be honest.
Yeah, you're like, what? This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't add up. Yeah, for sure. Tactical baby gear, I guess I'll define that quickly. We're a diaper bag company, essentially, right? We design and manufacture really cool military-style diaper bags for dads so that we aren't stuck carrying our wife's girly stuff or something else that maybe just doesn't speak to us, especially for the involved parents that are more hands-on or single dads and things of that nature. Like we're giving dads another option, and we can get into some more of the psychology of what's happened around that, which has been very interesting. But anyway, so in a nutshell, that's what we do. We make really cool baby gear for dads. And to speak on what you just said about the disconnect, and the way that I look versus like having a baby company,
Right.
which is very strange to me too. I'll be honest. Like I did not see myself here. This was not my 5-year or 10-year roadmap, was to have a diaper bag company. My background and history is in building custom cars. That makes a lot more sense when you look like, oh, that guy probably built cars. So that was my passion. When I started working on cars at like 14 or so years old, and that was like a side hustle for me in high school. And I was working on cars out of my parents' garage and stuff. And then that progressed, and I just fell more and more in love with cars. And I had a deep knowledge and understanding of how they functioned. And even when I look at a car today, I like see it in like that blowout view, and I can like see the wiring harness running through the car. I can see things in that exploded view, sort of transparent on a lot of things that I look at like that. So it's kind of interesting. But I had a very good understanding of vehicles. I went into an automotive school after that. I had a lot of success in the automotive industry, and we built cars that set world records at Barrett-Jackson, and we built stuff for celebrities and stuff like that, some really cool high-end stuff. And then in like the recession of 07 and 08, when that really hit and people weren't doing custom cars, we kind of switched gears for a little while and just a lot of service, maintenance, repair stuff, because everyone still needed to maintain their car at that point. So I've kind of done it all in the automotive industry. And that's kind of what led me to this was so my wife and I had one baby. We had a daughter, and she was working a full-time job, and she wouldn't get off of work till 10, 11 o'clock at night sometimes. So I was, I owned that car business, and I would lock up the shop at 5, 6 o'clock, go pick up the baby from daycare, and then, come home, feed the baby, do all the kind of nighttime routines, get her to bed, bath time, all that kind of stuff. And I was constantly running around. I was the one with the diaper bag because my wife was working, at night and stuff. So then we found out she was pregnant again. And then I found out it was another girl, and I was like, fuck, sorry if I can't curse. I was like, crap.
No, you're good.
I didn't want to carry her diaper bag again because I was so hands-on, so involved. And I knew that meant I was carrying her purple bag again. So I was like, all right, screw that. This time around, I want my own diaper bag. And
What year was this, by the way?
that was 2013. So 2013, I'm searching Google for like cool diaper bag for dad, men's diaper bag, stuff like that. Nothing existed. Like maybe a gray or black version of like your standard woman's diaper bag, but it still looked like a diaper bag, and you're just kind of like, nah. So with my background in cars and all that stuff, we did trim and upholstery work. So I was like, well, screw it. I'm just going to make my own bag that's the style of bag that I would want to carry. And I was a big like kind of guns and gear guy. I still am, but big guns and gear kind of guy, involved with a lot of like in a bunch of tactical communities and stuff. There's a lot of crossover in the automotive industry and like the tactical gun guy industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very much a part of that community as well. So I wanted to build a bag that represented that side of me and being able to be a diaper bag. So I came up with this idea for like a tactical diaper bag. And then my buddies were like, oh, that's so smart. Like, I want one. And I was like, oh, right. Of course, I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Right.
So then I'm like, I'll start a business. It'll be a little side hustle. It'll be fun. It'll be cool. And that turned out to be a good idea. And we hustled our way through, bootstrapped it. Here we are about 7 years later now, 7 years last month. And, we're an 8-figure business. So
that's fantastic. Congratulations.
That's kind of the summary of that. And I'm sure we'll dig deeper into a lot of the details, but that's kind of the short version of it.
One thing, and it's a kind of a misconception I'm sure you get a lot because of something we talked about prior. You are covered in tattoos. You're definitely looking like a badass. But do you have, because you have this big push for what seems like military. And right. Is that, you are not former military, is that correct?
Yeah, no, I was not in the military. I have a deep respect for the military and law enforcement officers, for the stuff that they do. I got a lot of family in the military and things like that. And nothing but respect. If I wasn't so good at what I was doing with cars and saw my path that way, I probably would have gone into the military. But I'm kind of, the other side of that is like, I like to do things my way and I don't like everyone telling me what to do. And that's kind of the entrepreneur in me. So there might've been some rub there, but I would have seen myself going into the military if I didn't have such a path that I was on already.
Right. One thing about your guys' stuff is it's very, like you said, you could see the respect that you have for the military. I mean, it comes out in a lot of the stuff. The bag that I have from you guys is camo and it looks really cool. What have you guys seen from, the military community with your guys' products?
Mixed emotions. Mm-hmm. There's a huge section of the military who absolutely loves it. The wives love it. And it's been really well received. And on the other spectrum of it is like the complete opposite, that, you got the military guys that when they're off work and take their uniform off, they don't want any association whatsoever with the military. And so they hate it. And that's fine. And I'm not, right. That's fine. Like, we're not forcing on anybody. It's just another option out there. Like when you go to shop for shoes or jeans or anything else, like pick out the ones you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, all that was out there prior to 2013 was literally mostly made for women, or a purple one.
Yeah. I mean, the baby industry is so mom centric and has been forever. Think back, even baby showers and things of that nature. It was just about mom. Mm-hmm. And, so finally here in the recent past, you've started to see more mixed baby showers with mom and dad, or maybe dads are getting their own little event, a beer and diapers party, things like that are, happening. We've thrown some man showers for some dads, and we go out and we get a bunch of guys together. We go shoot guns. Everyone brings diapers and stuff like that. So, you're starting to see more of that in society where dads are getting more involved, but you still see a lot of, even with COVID right now, this is a recent event where dad's not even allowed to go to the hospital for the baby's first checkup, or, mm-hmm. In labor, and they're kicking dad out during certain times, or people can't. It's just crazy to me that they think it's okay to like exclude dad from things, especially in the health side of it. We're like, that's my child as well. Why can't I go to this appointment or into this room, or I'm being left to sit in the car? And it just blows my mind.
I 100% agree with you.
There's stories we've heard from moms or dads really who are super pissed and upset because they can't go to the ultrasound to find out for the gender reveal. they're having to FaceTime to figure out the gender of their child. Like that woman doesn't live with that man in that house, and whatever someone has, they both have anyway. So like, what's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
I'll go on down a rant about that, but it just
No,
blows my
I
mind.
totally understand.
The whole industry is just so mom centric, and we're trying to make big pushes to get dads more involved, and at the core of it, like, we're getting them more involved from day one with a cool diaper bag. So now dad's pumped to be a dad and a parent and take care of the child from day one, which then translates into a lifetime, because they have that a better bond and connection those early years at a newborn and a 1 year or 2 year old, and they're like pumped to change a diaper because they get to use this cool bag or one of our cool blowout kits, and this is like just a cool diaper kit to help change a diaper in a pinch, and it's got everything you need to change a diaper. But like, dad's gonna be, he's like, oh, hold on, I got this, I'll change the diaper, instead of being like, you change the diaper, no, you change the diaper, I'm not changing the diaper. Like, he's gonna jump in there and be like, I got this, don't worry about it. So it's really changing the mindset for dads in the beginning, which then get them more involved, which then creates a better society, because there's a problem in society clearly, and we've seen it play out here over the last few months. And I've interviewed people on my podcast, guys like Craig Sawyer. There's human trafficking issues. There's, a lot of rioting and looting and things, and people just don't understand authority because they've never been told no. And all of it, every last bit of it stems from a lack of a father figure or a loving father figure in the home.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's one thing that, in my opinion, that the media has really pushed, especially like I would say in the past 10 years, where I feel like every father on TV is made to look like an idiot. One thing that me personally that I've experienced, today even, I was talking about my kids. I went to go get lunch and I'm picking up some stuff for my wife. And the lady asked me, I'm talking about my kids, and she goes, oh, do you help them change the diapers? And it was like kind of shocking, but I was like, yeah, of course. Like, of course I help. I mean, even my mom asked that, like, are you going to change the diapers? And it's like, I'm the dad.
It's insulting. Yeah.
Of course I'm going to. Like, I don't just like, this is not the 1950s where I'm just going to be like, you handle everything with the kids and have dinner.
This is your job.
It's weird that's still kind of the theme that we get in 2020, as if, we're incapable of being decent parents.
Yeah, it's crazy. Sorry, I just kicked my camera.
You're good. So I love the way that you were able to come in, find that niche, and you're able to find so many guys that really want this product. And that's kind of how I was introduced to you, because I was like, my wife has all this stuff that she got for the baby shower, and I was like, well,
yeah,
all right.
Stuff that she got for the baby shower. What did you get the baby shower? Nothing.
I did not get anything.
You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, everyone forgets about dad. Like, he doesn't matter in this equation. Like, come on.
Right.
It's so frustrating.
Now, as you were trying to grow the business, one thing I've kind of, I heard a little bit of research prior to this, you really focused on Instagram.
Hardcore. It was the most opportunity, especially in 2013, when it was like the whole chronological thing. It was completely organic, no algorithm. Like, every post that you made could have been seen by every follower you had, and you could have made another post 5 minutes later and they would have seen it 5 minutes later. I don't know if you were on Instagram back in 2013 in those early days, but it was awesome. There was the most opportunity ever. And not that there still isn't opportunity. It's harder on Instagram, for example, but there's still plenty of opportunity on different platforms, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat or, whatever. But yeah, hardcore on Instagram. Influencers were that was like early days of influencers. We got a shout out from a good buddy of mine who I knew from the automotive industry, who had 450,000 followers or something at the time, which was a huge deal back in 2013. I mean, still a lot of followers, but like back in 2013, that was like crazy, So, we had a boatload of followers for overnight for all intents and purposes. And that was a huge kickstart for just some awareness early on. And then it was up to us to convert those followers into customers and, all that kind of stuff. But we just went gangster on Instagram in the early days.
Mm-hmm. When you first came up with it, what was the time frame that it took for you to conceptualize the idea of making this bag to actually being able to make it ready to sell to somebody?
It's a long process, So the first one that I made that I used for myself, I wish I kept it. It's like in the trash somewhere because it sucks so bad. But like the idea and the thought was there, right? And I didn't know that it was going to become what it is. I had no clue. Like for me, it was just going to be like a side hustle thing because cars was cool and good, and
Mhm.
I hadn't had any interest in starting a baby brand, you know. So I was like, oh, some extra cash in my pocket. Well, then I realized, like, shoot, for me to make this thing, that takes a lot of my time,
Mhm.
and I was running a full-time business. I had a daughter and another one on the way. I was like, there's no way I can sit here and make these myself. So then it was trying to figure out how to outsource that, right? So getting, then you have to find manufacturers and factories and sampling and send prototypes and stuff like that. So that can be a long process.
Can you
Um,
delve into that a little bit? Like, how do you get started with something like that? Because that's actually really interesting to me.
yeah, yeah. So you have to figure out who those kind of companies are, and
Mhm.
they're not so easy to find. Like you're trying to find a factory to manufacture something for you. You think it's like easy to look that up or something, but it's not. It can be very difficult. One way around that is to find a trading company. So you
Okay.
look up, do a Google search for trading company in the US or Hong Kong or China or Vietnam or wherever you think you might want to manufacture it. I would suggest if you're in the US, a great way to get started is find a US based trading company, and they will help you source manufacturing. A lot of them will source manufacturing of all kinds. So if, injection molded plastic stuff or sewn, cut and sew stuff or whatever, they'll help you source that. And then they kind of act as the middleman dealing with an overseas factory or a domestic factory or helping you source the materials. And then that's basically, so they essentially are adding a small fee on top of the cost of the goods to help you manage that. And it's a great way to get started for sure. Because typically they have people, I'm saying this with, in a very general form, but
Sure.
they'll have people, if you're dealing with overseas manufacturing, they'll have a lot of times have people in that country. So you're eliminating a lot of language barriers, time zone problems, and trying to get back and forth. And you're up at midnight trying to have conversations with some foreign factory in a different language, and it's awful.
Mm.
A lot of things get screwed up that way, a lot of lost in translation stuff. So a US based trading company will help you source manufacturing in a lot of different ways, and that is a great way to get started. They'll help you with sampling and prototyping, and suggest, a lot of them have relationships with tons and tons of factories. So they'll be like, oh, we got a guy for that, or we've got a guy for that. We can do it in China, or we can do it in Vietnam. We suggest Vietnam because of the tariffs and taxes out of China right now. But if you rather, like, the cost could be better, blah, blah, blah. They'll give you all the logistics and breakdown of all that kind of stuff, and it's really good. But trading companies are a great way to get started.
When you were first getting started, you built your prototype, and did you come in and say, okay, if I'm going to take this seriously as a business, like, this is how much money I'm going to put into it? I mean, how does that work when you don't know that something's really going to be a full functioning business, and you have got all this other stuff on the side? You got kids coming in and doing startup costs. How do you adjust for that? And what did you kind of guys start with?
I didn't really have a lot of money, so my budget was like zero. I'm a new
Mm-hmm.
dad with a business who, like, the automotive business was great to me, but it's not like I had tons of extra money by any means. I was
Sure.
I was like 24 years old or something. I was like super young. Um, so I didn't really have a lot of money, but I went to a contact that I got from a good friend of mine, Gene Higdon, who is the guy who founded a company called High Speed Gear, and he's like a legend in the industry. He's such a great guy, and I met him kind of over the years at some point, and I knew him at the time of starting this, so I reached out to him. I'm like, Gene, I got this idea. I got this thing. Who do I go to? And he had a factory at the time from High Speed Gear, and they did in-house manufacturing in the U.S. And he kind of gave me some of his his sort of industry secret stuff. But he gave me a few contacts, a few leads. One of those ended up kind of panning out, and then I sent them a prototype bag and got a quote. And at that
Mm-hmm.
time, the quote was like, I was like, okay, that's not unreasonable amount of
Mm-hmm.
money. It was tens of thousands of dollars, but it wasn't
Mm.
like 100 grand.
Yeah.
And I thought for myself, I was like, okay, that's a reasonable amount of money for me to get my hands on.
Okay.
And I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I started asking family, banks, And everyone was like, are you kidding me? Like, no, I'm not going to lend you money. Like, this is a cute idea and everything, but no, you know? And I was like, all right, fine. So none of that was panning out. And I was still like trying to figure this out. And then in the course of me trying to figure out how to scale this, an old childhood friend of mine makes a post on Facebook of a product that he invented in college on the shelf in Target. And he was like, posted a picture of his product with the receipt. And it was just kind of like, you know, it's cool to see something you created or whatever being sold in Target or something along those lines.
Sure.
And I was like, aha, that's the dude I need to reach out to. And so I messaged him or texted him or something. I'm like, hey, what's up, dude? Like, you remember me? Of course you were. Like, we've known each other since like first grade, second grade. You know, we were never like best friends, but we played soccer together and we were in school together and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, what's up? You know, and I was like, hey, do you have, you know, like 30 minutes to chat one day? I want to ask you some stuff. So I ended up talking to him and tell him kind of what's going on. Like, hey, I started this thing called Tactical Baby Gear, and it's got some traction. I can't possibly do it and scale it on my own. I'm trying to find manufacturing and trying to figure out how to like take it to the next level. And there's like a lot of buzz around it. And I saw that you just had your stuff in Target. So you clearly have a lot of knowledge in the manufacturing and like retail side of things, which I know nothing about because I'm a guy who just cuts and welds and like makes things with my hands. I don't know anything about retail stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so he starts asking me some questions and makes you really, I'm like, God, I'm an idiot, you know? Like, he's like, well, have you gotten UPC codes and barcodes and stuff yet? I'm like, no, like,
yeah.
Do you mean you have to buy those? Like, you know, it's just stuff I didn't know. And I think the big moral of a lot of the takeaway of my story is ask questions. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, find someone that knows. More people are willing to help you than not. No one's going to be like, pound sand, I don't have time for you. Like, someone's going to share at least something with you or point you in the right direction. And that's like a huge takeaway from all that. So when I kind of went through a lot of those things with through these experiences and asking people, and they were always like happy to help, whether they thought I was going to make it or not was irrelevant to me because they pointed me in a direction that helped me get to where I am now. So, and that's part of me, like, even now, like, I try to give back so much. I've got, you know, personal brand side of things where the YouTube channel where I'm trying to share this information and make tutorials on Facebook ads and how to do e-commerce stuff and whatever. It's just trying to like give back because there's so much opportunity out there. And a lot of people are super willing to work and super capable of doing it. They just don't know what they don't know. And they don't know where to start. They don't know what direction to be going. They don't know, okay, well, I've got this and that, but like, what do I do next? And like, I want to be the catalyst that kind of helps them, you know, along that path and be sort of a resource of information that I wish I had then, you know? So
that's one of the things I've kind of noticed is people are actually really willing to talk about a lot. You know, some people are obviously cagey about, you know, certain numbers when it comes to, oh, I spent this much or that much. And I can understand that, but there's a lot of questions that people have because when it comes to starting a business, you know, they don't realize that, you know, this idea of bootstrapping, I mean, there is still going to be a cost. It can, you know, you have to really put in a lot of sweat equity and something like that, where, like you said, you were a new father, you had 2 kids and, you know, you were the mechanic. And how did you handle that? Like, what were your days like, work-life balance when you were first getting started?
my work-life balance is still screwed up, bro. I'm just like wired to work. And let me kind of back up for 2 seconds because I realized I sort of skipped over something. The guy that I reached out to about the Target thing who was doing stuff, eventually over about a 6 or 9 month period after negotiation stuff, he became my business partner. So he is my, now my current business partner here. And he brought a lot of, great information to the table, a lot of knowledge, but that most importantly, that money that I needed to manufacture the bags that I got the quote for.
Oh, so because I was confused about the negotiations. The negotiations were about him buying into the company and how much percentage he would basically get?
Yep.
Okay.
So
got it.
I basically sold roughly half the business to him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He brought him in as a partner for the amount of money that I needed to manufacture the goods.
That's how you were able to get the funds that you needed in order to Okay, got it,
Yep.
got it.
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
going to ask you a bit about dealing with that partnership. But I want to first start on like that work-life
Yeah.
balance. Like you
Yeah.
said, it's so crazy. And in those early days of getting started, I mean, what is that like? I mean, what is an average day like where you're trying to do everything?
Yeah. So my work-life balance is screwed up. It's better now than it ever has been, but especially in the early days when you've got that passion and that fire to do something and it's super exciting. I was, getting up at 7 a.m, getting the kids up, getting them ready for to go to daycare at the time, and then I would drive them to daycare, and then I would get to my shop. I'd work in the shop all day, sweating, working hard on cars, doing that kind of stuff, managing that business, dealing with customers, answering phones, just like the grind of a service business, which is hard. From 8 to about 5:30, I would
Mm-hmm.
get the kids from daycare. I'd get home. We do dinner. We do bath time, and that whole routine. I'd get them to sleep. 7:30, 8 o'clock. I don't know what time it was, but anyway, some reasonable bedtime for however
Sure.
old they were. And then we get straight back to hustling, whether that was fulfilling orders or Instagram or, trying to, improve the website or take pictures of the products or improve the product or, whatever the case was. And I would do that till probably 2 a.m.
Mm.
And I would just grind it out. And then I'd get 5 or 6 hours of sleep and wake up and do it again.
But how does that play a relationship on like marriage? Like somebody who's an entrepreneur who's trying to go through that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how do you guys do that?
It was hard. I think some of it, my wife has like nothing but faith and trust in me.
Mm-hmm.
And, we didn't have a lot of money at the time. And I think she was probably the only one who had faith in the success of that business, probably even more so than I did. But she saw how much energy I had going into it. She saw the feedback from customers and the DMs that we were getting on Instagram and just this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Where was this when I had kids? All these kinds of messages. So she was seeing a lot of that kind of stuff that no one else was seeing. That when I take an idea to my aunt, I'm like, hey, can I borrow some money? And she's just like, oh, that's cute, but no. Like she didn't see the whole picture, and maybe that was a
Sure.
poor part on my job for like underselling it or something. But at any rate, she just had tons of faith in what I was doing, and she knew that I was doing it for a good reason, and the intent was there. She also a lot of time was working till 11 o'clock at night, so that helped because there was no one home from 8 to 11 anyway. So then when she got home, she was like winding down, eating dinner, doing whatever. And it's not like it was time to sit on the couch and watch a show together and spend quality time together. She was like trying to just like wind down and get ready for bed. So I was just working through that time. But there's plenty of times where she wasn't at work and she would help me. You know what I mean? She was the original person packing and shipping orders, replying to emails, printing stuff out to send to the customers. She was the original customer service and fulfillment person. So we were in it together, which I think really helped.
Yeah. Is that you mentioned going to family for trying to get, funds. Hey, I want to invest in, I want you guys to invest in this. Is that like, God, that's gotta be so weird for somebody who's, trying to gather that money. I mean, is there, did you ever feel like bad about doing anything like that? I mean, is there that something you had to overcome?
I only asked a couple people that I knew had the disposable income,
Mm-hmm.
so I wouldn't have asked like a cousin or something that I knew just wouldn't have had the money and made it really awkward then. I also only asked a couple family members that I knew kind of that I thought had faith in my determination because I was already running a business that had a lot of success and a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Credibility, where I was like very well known. I was voted best in town and in magazines and that kind of stuff, where it was like, well, he clearly is like going to put his head down and grind. I don't know that they thought maybe they would lose their money or if they just, I don't know, their real reasons. I know what the reply was and some of that stuff, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know that I would do it. I don't know. You'll kind of do anything in the beginning when you need money and you have like, you're just desperate for this idea to take off. So Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't super awkward about it. I just made a couple of uh, quick, kind of casual conversations about it, and then they kind of were like, let me think about that. I'll get back to you. And then it was kind of replied back with like, it's not a good time, or my
Right.
financial advisor said I shouldn't do that, or whatever.
Sure, sure. Well, let's circle back to the partnership deal where you
Uh-huh.
had, you needed the money, you went out and you found somebody who's willing to buy in because they kind of saw the vision. Something where, you have a partnership. I mean, what is the experience that you've had with that? Some of the ups and downs, because, there's a lot of people who say the only ship that won't float is a partnership. So what's been your experience with that?
You know, I've had several different partnerships over the years with different people in the automotive industry that did not pan out at all. I got burned on a deal really bad. I lost just about everything in that deal, and it was awful. And that was kind of like, I'm never doing any partnerships again. I'm never working with anybody again, yada, yada, yada. And then uh, he kind of had the same experience Alex did, where his previous business that he was in, when I talked to him, the Target stuff and all that stuff,
Hmm.
he had a business partner in that was just like, it was the bad situation, volatile, people stealing money. Like it was ugly and just not his type. Like that's just not who he is. Like he doesn't want to be involved in that stuff and yada, yada, yada. He wanted out of that business anyway. So when I had, when we started negotiating him coming on as a partner, it was great because he was looking to get out of his business already. So he ended up selling that business to his partner and then bought into my business. But so we both kind of come into this partnership with very similar experiences, with very similar moral compasses. He and I have known each other since primary school, kindergarten, first grade, whatever. Um, Both of our families live here. Both of our families have excellent. We live in a small town, um, and everyone knows our families, and our families both have incredible reputations, and we're all good people. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
I wasn't
Yeah.
concerned about getting burned from him. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And I was excited that he had a skill set that I didn't. And he and I are literally, we couldn't be more opposite people. I'm like shooting from the hip, screw it, let's just do it and figure it out. We're gonna make it work, and we'll screw up a few things along the way. We'll learn something. It's still gonna happen.
Right. Right.
And
That you got that cowboy attitude.
that's me, dude. It's
Yeah.
dangerous sometimes too.
Yeah.
Like slow it down, beef. But
Right. Right.
he is he is like super calculated. Let's do a spreadsheet on it, and I'm just like, no, it feels like the right thing to do. Let's just do it. So we're like a yin and yang in that kind of sense, where we're just such polar opposites that it works so well. And I don't know if that's the case for everybody with that kind of like opposing personalities, but it works really well for us. And I couldn't be more thankful for that, because it keeps us both kind of in check a little bit, where I'm like pushing him a little because he'll be super conservative about something, and he's like trying to reel me in because I'm trying to be too aggressive about it, or whatever. So it's worked really well so far. The other side of it, though, is in speaking about partnerships, setting yourself up in case it goes south. Like he and I have always set things up. It's like you're basically getting married to this person. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you're in everything together. There's financial crap that's going together with the business. You're like in each other's everything.
Yeah.
And, decisions that he or I might make in our personal lives affect us in our business partnership and things like that. So you have to take that in consideration. And there's times where it sucks and it's annoying, or you're just kind of like, man, like someone's always in my business. Like it can, but it's like, that's just the cost of like having an awesome partnership like that. But setting yourself up for that like potential failure, where you're like, hey, if we decide to hate each other tomorrow, what is our out? And kind of having some of that in a clause in a partnership agreement that a lawyer's written up, I think is huge. That is mutually beneficial on the front end going into it. That's reasonably fair, whatever that means,
Yeah.
for you guys. Of like, if I want out, or I'm just done, or I'm burnt out, or I'm sick of this and I'm just over it and I want to leave, like this is how that's going to happen. Or if you start screwing me and stealing money from the business, this is how this is going to go down. or, whatever. But I think that's kind of that's because that's the kind of stuff that creates animosity, that people get burned over and all this stuff. But like, figure out how you're going to break up when you're getting together.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because one thing that you talked about was how important relationships are, because you can look at the history of, how is that person with their family? Do they have a lot of animosity? Because a lot of times that'll kind of transition over in their business life and how they're going to be. So that was, I think, a really important takeaway from what you just said. Mm-hmm. But also, is this kind of the first time that you would have lawyers involved in the partnership deal, or had you done it prior?
No, this is the first time having lawyers involved. And really, thankfully, because of him and on his end, because, he was burned pretty bad in a deal. Mm-hmm. And he had a pretty decent sized business where they had a lot of lawyers and stuff, because they're dealing with mass market and Targets and Urban Outfitters and Macy's and all this kind of stuff. So he was kind of used to a lot of the legal world. And that was the route he wanted to go. That wasn't even because, again, I'm like the cowboy. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's partner up. Let's make it happen. Yeah. I trust you, but he's like, hold on.
Yeah.
So, I'm really thankful for that, and I think that speaks volume about his personality of like, hey, let's figure this out now so that neither one of us gets screwed later.
Right. Absolutely. One thing that I was wondering about, in the sense of being in the baby industry, mm-hmm. Are there any kind of specific regulations that need to be followed when you get into an industry where it's so important with these, these little helpless little things? Yeah. Somebody that's going to start in that industry, like, what is something you have to look out for?
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of compliance around baby for sure. There's things like you have to be 7P compliance, I think is what it is. So like materials have to be tested to make sure that they're not harmful to a baby, that if they were to chew on it or swallow it or something of that nature, that like it's not going to be harmful to the baby if, then you've got like, other choking hazards and things of that nature. We have a baby carrier that actually holds a child. So there's a lot of testing and regulations around that.
Well, who checks that though?
It's called, there's registrations you have to get. I can't speak to the act. There's like an acronym to it. It's like the CPSIA or something. I don't know. And that's all stuff we had to learn and figure out too. And it's like, all right, and I think some of that stuff actually came from our insurance company, that they were like, fine, if we're going to insure this, it needs to be certified by these people, this organization.
Got it.
Right. So it was like that kind of stuff. We were like, oh, right, of course. So it's like, okay, then we have to deal with that. And then we have to take, our prototype product and send it into their lab. And then they test it for all this crap and weight and this and that. And then they're like, stamp of approval. Yeah, you're good to go. Then the insurance company's like, okay, if they're good with it, we're good with it. Mm-hmm. So if something happens, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how that works.
Well, how long does that take for them to test out a new product that you come up with?
It took a long time. In terms of the baby carrier, that's the longest for sure. I don't remember though. It was like 6 months. I mean, it took a while for that. It was longer than we would have liked. We were sitting on like, come on, like we want to launch this thing for Christmas, and we're like, nope, missed that boat,
Got it.
So it was a while. We were like, hello, like, hey, remember us knocking on their door?
Right.
Can we get this? But it was a
while.
while.
The newer stuff that you guys come out with, that's not necessary that you have to do it. So for example, I mean like the wagon, I want to call it by the proper name that you guys have.
Yeah,
but
the cruiser.
The cruiser, yeah.
That is tested by the manufacturer. So we don't manufacture that product. A company called Veer manufactures that. So they deal with all the logistics. They designed it. Like Veer is another brand that made that thing. And they're like engineers, and those guys are super smart. And we helped them launch their brand and that product when they first came out. And then so they allowed us to kind of collaborate with them and do our version of their product. So on that thing, they've gone through insane testing, because it's like a certified stroller, which means it carries a baby, and it has to have car seats click into it. It has this very specific brake mechanism and like all these different things. And they deal with all that stuff. So I'm not sure on the ins and outs of like a stroller, like that thing is. I mean, it's classified as a stroller.
Sure.
And there's a lot of regulations around that, but I don't know what the specifics are on who tests that for them.
How long, when you guys were starting out, I know you obviously had that influx of cash with your business partner. How long was it that you guys were in business before you guys started seeing a profit?
It's always been profitable because we've been able to operate it super lean. That's the
Hmm.
kind of the beauty of e-commerce, right? That you can start it out of your bedroom or out of your house or your living room, wherever you want. In most cases, in e-commerce, which is like a pro and a con because it means there's zero barrier to entry for anybody to start an e-commerce business, which is great because that means everyone has the opportunity to do that. If you have an idea and you're willing to work hard enough on it, anybody can do it. You don't have to have a big building. You don't have to, it's not like opening a retail store downtown where you got to go get a lease and do all this stuff and stock it with all this inventory and make it look pretty and all this stuff. Like, you can kind of just do it tomorrow for like $30 on Shopify,
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
we've always been able to operate really lean in the beginning, and our cost to operate was always fluctuating with the volume of business we were doing. So we were always able to keep that in line. However, we took those profits and continued to reinvest them into the business. So we never really took a paycheck for like the first couple of years, that
Mm.
we just kept taking those profits and reinvesting and buying more inventory because we were growing at such a rate that we needed more and more inventory all the time. So like, well, we can't pay ourselves. Like, let's just keep dumping inventory. Thankfully, I was still building cars, and he
Okay, so
still
you
had
did
stuff.
have stuff on the side so
I
that
was
you didn't
still,
have to touch this. Okay,
yeah, yeah. So thankfully, I didn't need the profit income from this. And Alex, from the sale of his business, still had some money
sure.
and stuff like that. So like, we didn't need to take a paycheck. So we just kept buying more inventory, more inventory, more inventory, more inventory until that was sort of self-sustaining. And it was like, okay, now we can start taking a little bit of money. So because there's the other side of it too, where if you don't reward yourself a little bit along the way, you start to feel like, well, what am I doing this for? Or your
Hmm.
wife starts being like, why are you doing this? You're not making any money. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
there's that kind of stuff too, for sure, to keep in mind. And then you want to make sure again, I wasn't like getting rich off of cars, but it was a good business. But like, all of a sudden when the family wants to go to Disney World because the kids are 4 and 5 years old now, and you're like, I can't afford it. She's like, well, what the hell you been doing all this time?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you got to start
Absolutely.
paying yourself a little bit, if you need to do that to kind of reap some of the rewards for what you're doing. And I think that's super important. And I do that kind of stuff all the time. Like, I bought a car. I bought an NSX last year as just kind of like a rewarding thing that
Hmm.
turns into more motivation to keep doing better. And there's a lot of like people that look down on that. You guys, you talked about us having Gary Vee on our podcast, and he's the kind of guy's like, don't buy dumb shit, blah 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 blah. But like, it's on you. It's like, you do you. If me buying an Acura NSX is what motivates me to continue going or keep doing more, to grow the business, to employ more people, to give my guys raises or whatever the case is, and so be it. Like, that's what I want
Sure.
to do. Or if I want to go
Well, I mean,
buy
I
a
feel
boat,
like,
or
no, I feel like that's more when you're starting out and you don't have any money. I mean, you have a profitable business at this point.
yeah, yeah, for sure. What's funny about that? I was just talking to someone about Gary Vee the other day, and he goes on this full extreme of like, don't buy dumb shit and do all these like crazy extreme ideas that he has, but it's really all for the startup guy. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
Very practical advice for startups for sure, but I don't think it always translates into somebody that's established and doing well.
One thing I feel like I've noticed, you know, I feel like some people get really weird when people start to become successful, when they start to have a little money, when they start to have some success. Did you guys see any of that as you started to have a profitable business and, it was able to sustain itself? And like you said, you got an Acura NSX. So did you start to see that from family of like them being weird about you guys having a little bit of money?
Um, Maybe a little bit, but not outwardly like a problem. Like, I'm a pretty humble guy, so I hope that like any of my things that I'm saying about like buying an NSX doesn't, it's not bragging. That's not what I mean by that. So just so that's there, but like, most people know that I work my ass off, and I have for a
Hmm.
very long time. So I think most of the people in my circle are pretty happy for us. You know what I mean? Like, man, it's so cool. It's like so awesome to see where it came from. And you guys are so, congratulations. It's so cool. Stuff like that. So And I try to surround myself with really good people. You know what I mean? And most of
Hmm.
the people around me have seen it happen from the beginning and have been involved or worked for me in the car business, so they've seen the grind and they know it does not, and I take care of everyone around me too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like,
Yeah.
well, screw you, pound sand, so I don't get that attitude from people because I don't act in a way that would result in them feeling weird towards me.
Okay. So it's kind of all how you act yourself. I mean,
I
maybe
think
it's that
so.
sometimes that
For
money
me,
changes the people. Yeah.
for sure. I see that a lot too. Like all of a sudden someone's way better than you because now they're making some money. And you're like, well, hey, don't forget where you were, 2 years ago, asshole,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so there's that side of it for sure. But I'm a pretty humble guy, and I'm not afraid to like get my hands dirty with anyone else either.
Hmm. Has being a successful business owner opened up a couple of other doors when it comes to relationships?
Um, yeah, I think so. Uh, that's a great question. Did you just pull that one out, or do you have that one like in the bank ready to? That's a good one, man. I don't think I've ever been asked that one before. Probably, but I can't say for sure whether that opportunity would have been there before or not.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, these are the things that, I hope to someday be in your position to have a successful business. So, that's one of the things I think about is how do these people get all these connections? Is it just because they were successful or, so that's one of the things that I think about. And so, like it's just because you mentioned Gary Vee and being
Hmm.
able to connect with somebody he's a very popular guy. So, I just wanted to talk to that a little bit and about
Yeah,
relationships once you become successful.
sure. I mean, I certainly don't think we would have had Gary Vee on our podcast without the company and the success that the company's had. They
Hmm.
were drawn to that. They were like, "Holy shit, this is awesome! This is great timing." Our pitch to Gary to have him on the podcast was, "Hey, we're a parenting based brand. You have been very vocal recently. This was last year, very vocal recently about how you attribute so much of your success to the way you were parented. My mom was the greatest thing ever, and she, all Gary talks about is how awesome his mom was, and instilled ethic in him, and gratitude, and all these things. And he attributes all that to the way he was parented, yada yada yada. So we were like, hey, this is great. Let's talk about that. Then they're like, hey, perfect timing because Gary's getting ready to write this book called Perfectly Parented. I'm like, even better. So
Hmm.
a lot of things were in alignment, but also the fact that we were, a well-established brand in business, and our podcast has listeners, and we've got a large audience that we can kind of. A lot of it too is just like how much audience of mine can he siphon with
Sure.
his message, which, and that's just kind of the name of the game with a lot of these collaborations and podcasts is like, hey, hopefully I can share some of my audience with you and I can get some of your audience and we both win. Right.
Absolutely.
And then ideally through that, everyone's learning something along the way. Uh, so yeah, certainly we wouldn't have been able to do something with Gary without the success of the business for sure.
Yeah, it's not like he just, oh, hey, I'm a no-name podcaster just starting out. I don't have anything. Like he's not going to hop on that because it's a waste of his time. He doesn't. There's no audience there. There's no brand there.
Right. Right.
Right. Gotcha.
And
So,
we've gotten to like now what's really cool is, like Trouty and Stu and some of those guys who are all running Empathy Wines, which is his wine company. We've become really good friends with those guys. So that's been really, really cool. And I think the relationship with those guys to me is almost more important than the fact that we had Gary on the podcast. Like it'll be a more long-term thing being friends with those guys and having a relationship with those guys than just like Gary on the podcast once.
right, right. When it comes to like when you're kind of starting out and you're starting to, like you said, you got to the point where the inventory was self-sustaining and, it was able to pay for itself. What about when it comes to hiring full-time staff members? At what point were you like, look, we can't do this. We need to hire on some people.
Probably about a year after I brought Alex on as a partner. And I talked about this not too long ago in a podcast. The infrastructure that you need to have in place changes at different milestones in the business. So depending on your business, if you're shipping a product that you're already manufactured, that someone else is manufacturing for you. For outsourcing manufacturing, and you are outsourcing fulfillment to a fulfillment center, and you're not shipping it in house, and all you're doing is kind of like marketing and operations type of stuff and customer service, you could do $1 million a year without having to hire anybody. Like one person could do all that. And then you kind of hit that threshold of like over $1 million, and you're like, all right, we're at a volume now where we need a customer service guy to deal with the emails. Hey, I didn't get my tracking number. Hey, I ordered the wrong color and I need to exchange it. That kind of stuff. Or, hey, the zipper on my bag broke, just like random stuff that happens with manufactured products that you end up having to deal with. And then you get to that volume where you're like, all right, I've got other stuff to deal with. I'm trying to, develop a new product or negotiate rates or deal with this other thing. I can't answer all these emails anymore. So, I hire a customer service team. And then, that you kind of grow past that, and you're trying to, create more content or do more things because there's some new social platform out. And now you're trying to create content for 13 different platforms. And maybe you need to hire someone to help, a video guy or a photo guy or someone in the art department, right, to kind of help scale the marketing side of things.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. So you could get from $1 to $3 million with like that customer service guy. I feel like at least that was kind of our case. And then we started to really rapidly hire people as we were like wanting to scale more and faster and take a look. Like I had so much on my plate. I was still working till like 1:00 in the morning. You know what I mean? I'm like millions of dollars a year, and I'm still grinding. And it wasn't until like this year that I've like 9 to 5 normal business hours. Cause now my kids are 6 and 9 years old. They need dad at home. They want dad at home. I want to be there for them. So as I spoke to earlier, like my work-life balance now is more in line than ever before, but only because I've hired, we've got, I think 9 employees here now. And then we've got fulfillment guys and stuff like that. So it's gotten a lot better in that regard. But yeah, I think everyone's situation is different in terms of like when they hire full-time employees. And it's a hard thing to do. It's for a business owner, it can be very difficult to kind of let go, of certain tasks and delegate that to other people. Unless it's just stuff that I try to hire people to do the things that I just don't want to do. That makes it a lot easier too. You're like, I don't want to answer every email. I'm like I'm a creative, like build stuff, do it, come up with some crazy new product guy. I do not do well sitting at a computer typing keys. I can barely put a sentence together. Like I reply to people in DMs with like emojis. Like that's my communication skills.
Yeah. So a couple more questions for you before I let you go. So when it comes to your day-to-day life, you just talked about you had to give up some stuff. So for the most part, now that you are at the level you're at, are you kind of just coming up with the ideas of the creating new product stage? I mean, what does a day-to-day of a CEO look like now? Like, because obviously you used to do everything. So how is it different now?
A lot of just high-level strategy stuff. I still execute on a lot of it myself. Like, I do a lot of the Facebook ads and Pinterest and Instagram. Like, I make every Instagram post. I'm replying to the DMs. I'm commenting. Like, that's all me. So I still spend a lot of my time in social media because that helps me keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening, in the world in terms of, I don't know, just, what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of a finger on the pulse of what's happening, in the world and with the brand and customer feedback and things like that. I also spend a good bit of time, especially recently, on some new product development, which I work with my art director with. So he helps me kind of take some of my thoughts and ideas, and he'll get them onto the computer. He might make me templates that I can then cut and sew and make a prototype. And then we take and refine that prototype, and then we send it off to the factory and get some stuff rolling there. Some of it's just meetings all day with like our operations guy and trying to figure out, like, hey, can we negotiate better shipping rates? We're getting feedback from customers that, I've seen the seam rip out of the same spot on this bag 5 times this week. And I'm like, okay, this is a problem that we need to address somewhere. So then we got to figure that out. There's just a lot of firefighting, where it's just like
Okay.
things pop up and it's like, all right, now I got to deal with that. Oh, now I got to deal with that. And things like that pop up all the time. And all of a sudden, so I had something to do, and then something else becomes more important. And then that thing kind of gets pushed off and sort of falls through the cracks. So then I hired an assistant to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. And she's like, hey, I know you need to do this, but when you get done with that, I need you to get back to this, because then I'll move on to something else, because I sort of forget about this because I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
And like that's a problem. So now she's like making sure I don't forget things and scheduling podcasts like with you, because there's a lot of back and forth. And I was spending way too much time back and forth with people trying to just schedule a podcast. And I'm super happy to do the podcast. I just don't have the time to be like, yeah, this day works. No, that time. No, this time.
Right.
Here's the link. Do you have the link? It just didn't make
I
sense
get
for me
it.
to be spending my time with that. Right. So, she handles all that kind of stuff, scheduling other meetings and taking notes during internal meetings to make sure that we follow up on the things we talk about. There's just a million things. And I've got a video guy, production guy who does all the podcast stuff and the product videos and YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff, and graphic designer who's doing super rad graphics on the website or thumbnails for videos or, whatever, or artwork for packaging.
I want to ask you about that one in a bit, but is it still as fun? You still have the same passion? Because, when you first get started, you want to do those, 12, 16-hour days, and you're like, look, I'm killing it. Mm-hmm. It's been 7 years. Do you still have that same passion for it?
Yes. Mostly. I'd say on a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being like where it was in the very beginning, I'm probably like 95, because I think that I love the grind of trying to figure things out in the early stages of stuff so much that once it's working so well and it's such a well-oiled machine, and there's a lot of things that can kind of just go by without being messed with at times for longer periods of time, that it's like, I don't know, maybe a little less exciting, because I'm like, okay, cool, we figured it out. Like I want a little bit more challenge, but I find those challenges myself by like trying to just raise the bar. I'm like, okay, cool, we hit this goal. Can we do this? And then I have a new challenge, and then it's exciting. And then I go home and I want to keep working. And my wife's like, hey, put your phone down, or whatever.
Right.
So she keeps me in check, but it's still exciting. And to that point with passion and spending all those hours working, if you don't have the passion for what you're doing, you won't have the energy to grind it out like that. And what I mean is, like, people were always asking, like, how do you have the energy to do that? Like, you're sleeping 5 hours a night.
Yeah.
Have you done this for years? I'm like, when you have the passion for it, that passion creates the energy, and the energy is what drives you to do it, even if you only got 5 hours. You know what I mean? So
right.
You don't have the passion for it from like day one, it's not going to become successful because you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I mean, how much of it, well, I want to touch on the goals, but how much of that, it doesn't seem like money is the driving force behind it. Like, we've talked about it, and it's just like, it's just a byproduct of success.
Yeah. It's great. And it gives you the ability to do some things that maybe you couldn't do if you had money, but that's not what it's about for me. I am just trying to have fun.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. And so with that, like, I was going to ask if, I want to have 50 employees, or, I want to do $100 million in sales. I mean, are those the goals you kind of set for yourself, or it's not really like that?
It's not like that. I think a lot of it is just like maintaining growth, because I always want to be moving forward. So it's like maintaining growth and have fun doing it, I think, are probably my top priorities. And really have fun doing it while maintaining growth is really kind of, if I had to prioritize them, are my top priorities. So in order to maintain growth, all the other things have to happen. You have to hire more people. You have to, all this kind of stuff. So that's just kind of a byproduct of maintaining growth in my eyes. Like, I would have 2 employees if I could, because managing employees can be a pain in the ass sometimes. You know what I mean? But it's just not realistic if you want to continue to grow and then still try to live your life, because, the reality is I got kids. Like, I can't do that forever. Like, I want to be able to give them experiences and do things without them being like, I didn't know my dad. All he did was work all the time. Like that's not what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, I want to start touching on the products because I actually have mine right here. That's how I kind of found out about you guys and originally wanted to come out. I've got the 3.0 version
Yeah.
bag. So what are kind of, the things that people should know about that are listening to this podcast? That's different than any previous version or any other bag that's out there on the market.
Yeah, so we're constantly just making iterations of the bag, and we're constantly just trying to improve it. So, like the 3.0 is just it's far more than 3 versions of that bag. But there's like the first version, which is like day 1, and then that turned into a day pack 2.0, which was like a notable design change from 1 to 2, and then from 2 to 3, there were some pretty notable design changes again, and then there's been probably 10 or so updates to the bag you have currently that still remain the 3.0, that it looks exactly the same, but maybe there's an extra pocket somewhere, or maybe there's another thing somewhere. So like almost every time we do a run of those bags through the factory, there's been some enhancement made to it. And sometimes the average person won't really pick up on it, but we're constantly trying to improve it in some way, shape, or form. But that bag is super rad, and I think the biggest thing about it is the built-in changing mat that makes it really, really cool and unique. So the back panel of the bag tears down, and it's got our iconic drop zone stand clear thing in it.
Boom, right there.
Yeah.
And let's see if I can get this up on camera enough, but it does drop zone.
Yeah. So if you're listening, he's showing us the bag and the drop zone stand clear graphic in there. So that's kind of our iconic thing. Gets a lot of attention. People love it. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. That
was all you right there. That was the creative idea that you're talking about that you enjoy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then that bag also, another thing that makes it a diaper bag versus just a backpack are like the stroller straps that are built into the shoulder pads. So those tuck away into a little pocket, they pull out. You can suspend it from your stroller, things of that nature. So we tried very hard to make it not look like a diaper bag. So it looks more just like a standard cool backpack.
Yeah, it does look like a backpack, yeah.
But has diaper bag features, so that was the goal and thought process behind that.
I was going to ask, if it's a new dad that's out there, what are the things that you would recommend for a starter pack?
Depending on the budget, we have some kits and bundles available on the website. So we've kind of like sort of done some of that thinking for people and like which components go together. Because, the bag uses a MOLLE system, which is like a modular system that the military uses. So we adopted that system for our bag. So we've got pouches and accessories that you can attach to the bag. But we did a lot of that thinking for people, especially if they're gift giving. This goes on to baby registries all the time. So the Day Pack 3.0 combo set is super popular. It comes with a couple of pouches, and we've kind of kitted together stuff that works really well together. And then the bundles that also come, basically it's like that combo set sort of setup, plus the baby carrier. The baby carrier is really popular. It's really cool. People love it. And so we've kind of kitted some of that stuff together, and then you save money. We bundle. It's like a bundle and save sort of thing, right? So it's like a discounted price if you buy it together. And the backpack is the most popular. We've got a couple of different backpacks, but that Day Pack 3.0 is the most popular over the like standard shoulder bag style thing. And then the combo set and the bundle are super popular, and those are great gifts.
Yeah. And so if they get that, they can get that at Tactical Baby Gear. Is there anywhere else they can find it?
If they're
you guys aren't in stores yet, right? You guys are not
in some stores. We have strategic partners, so we're really set our business model up as a direct to consumer brand. Because again, my partner coming from the mass market retail world, where he was like, "Trust me, we do not want to get into that. It sucks." And we went through some of it, and we've just kind of said no to a lot of opportunities that most people are like, why in the world did you say no to that? I'm like, you didn't want to do it. It's not a good deal for us,
Yeah.
And, but if you're on the military bases, in the Army and the Air Force, we are in lots of the exchange stores on base. And then 9 Line Apparel in Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston. They carry our stuff if you're in those areas. And then U.S. Patriot Tactical. If you have one near you, you're probably aware of it. If you don't, you can get it on tacticalbabygear.com.
All right, perfect. And what are people getting out of the podcast so they can also tune in there?
Okay, so we've got a podcast, the Tactical Baby Gear podcast, where we interview really awesome people in the world who are also parents. So we hear a little bit about their story, about what they're doing, what they're up to, and then some of the parenting aspects of how some of that relates, or just other important topics in the world. So we just had a guy like Craig Sawyer on the podcast who's talking about human trafficking, child sex slavery, stuff like that. So trying to bring, topics like that to the surface and really educate people on those sort of things. And then I've got a podcast myself too in the world of entrepreneurship and business and e-commerce. And you can go to my website, which is beavbrodie.com, and get to that podcast and YouTube channel that, I teach a lot of the stuff we were talking about.
Okay. What's the name of that podcast?
It's just Beav Brodie podcast.
Beav Brodie podcast. Perfect. Well, Beav, thank you seriously so much for being here. I really appreciate it. You make a very high quality product. It's awesome. I don't feel ashamed walking around in public with it at all for any of those guys out there. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.